This short podcast is for my friend and fellow artist, C Boogie. And she knows who she is. Um, this one was inspired by some comments that she made on Facebook. You know, it's occurred to me, and I guess it's occurred to her because she pointed it out. I think perhaps most of the news that we see today is based off of 10 to 20% of who we are. And the rest of the 80 to 90% that don't get discussed just don't make a good news story. If 80 to 90% of us are doing okay, then for the press, there's nothing to report on. There's reality, and then there's outrage. And one is more exciting than the other. Most days I wake up on those weekends that I'm off of work, especially those fall days where, the air is great. You throw on your sweater, you throw on your hat and your scarf, and there's nothing better than walking. And I do that a lot. When I listen to the news, I would assume that it's not safe to go outside of my house. I'd assume that fucking Vietnam, in the 60s is going on. I'd assume that there's a rapist on every corner. I'd assume that there's a black kid waiting to shoot me every 4 blocks. I'd assume that there's an angry feminist with green hair that wants to throw me in jail. And for every green-haired feminist, there's a rapist lurking behind every tree. And then I realized that for the 100th time in my 45 years of life, I made it home again with little fanfare. That's hilarious. When you stop and think about it, you breathe a sigh of relief. Because if the world were truly, or our country were truly as the news would have you believe, we are in a state of emergency that's very similar to the old movie with Kurt Russell in it, Escape from New York. But that's not what the real world looks like. The media has a choice. The media could show African Americans the majority as they really are, but that just wouldn't make for good news. It wouldn't be exciting because African Americans, the majority of African Americans, they wake up, they put on their shoes, they go to work. The end. There are stories that are true. People aren't getting married anymore within the African American community. But it's a certain age demographic. It's not the same. I mean, it occurred to me that everybody that I know black is, they're trimming their hedges. A friend of mine that I hadn't spoken to in a while is a regional manager for AT&T. She's having no problems in life. Another friend of mine is an architect, black. And it's across the board. There's women who talk about, and there are women who have been raped. And the thing is, their story is valid and it actually happened. But I know many, many, many more women who have not been raped. And I think it's okay for the news to report on this. It's just you don't have to polarize everything. If there's something happening, like indeed, black on black violence is there. 21% of the African American community is living below what's considered the poverty line. I don't know the percentage of women that get raped and don't report it, but there's a significant one. Yeah, they need to be reported upon. But I don't think they should be sensationalized. Now, level with me. If the news were boring, would you watch it? If the news were true but boring, would you watch it? Shit. It's kind of like a movie without a plot. If the movie has no antagonist, there's a good chance that you're not going to watch it. I think that says a lot about our society. I think we love watching the drama of the news, but we sure as hell don't live that drama. The number of things that we stay out that the news stays outraged about is appalling. Both sides. Both sides. I've seen some stuff taken out of context. You know, Rachel Maddow used to say, okay, the big bombshell's about to drop. And you know, it hits with all of the impact of a feather falling on the floor. And then the conservatives will point out something with the other side. You know, somebody will say something taken out of context, which 20 years ago, most people wouldn't have recognized as offensive or racial or discriminatory against women. But now there's very little window to say anything because we're outraged all the time for absolutely no reason. What does that say about our society and our need for drama? Because it's not happening in your real life. What does that say? I do believe that the country is in a state of emergency in certain ways. But those ways that it's in a state of emergency are a little less exciting than what they're presenting on the news. And hearing about lawmaking and policies that subtly change stuff, it really doesn't. Americans don't want to hear about that. They don't want to hear about the end. And they should want to. They really should. That's where your focus should be. But, you know, they want to hear about other stuff. They want to hear about, a bombshell dropped on Washington. Donald Trump was sleeping with a porn star. Michelle Obama was angry at Barack Obama for sharing pictures. Was it the prime minister? I can't remember her name. Beautiful woman. But, you know, they took clips of Michelle with the look on her face. And then they took another clip and they spliced them together and they made it look like she was Frying Pan Fran. Like she was so angry at Barack Obama that she was ready to just completely cut the guy's nuts off. And they did this through wonderful editing. Don't you ever want to know the straight story? I know I do. I would love for somebody to put up a news affiliate that was dedicated to reporting truthful, boring news as it's actually happening real time. That'd be a godsend, you know? But right now, it's Operation Cultivate the Outrage as best we can. Let's add fuel to the fire and let's get those ratings going. Anytime the news is deeply concerned about ratings over facts, it stops being the news. it turns into the biggest reality show that the world has ever seen. Because that's what they do to reality shows. When things aren't as exciting or as controversial as they need them to be, they splice together some conflicts that happen completely out of sequence. And then they put them together, and then they give you Big Brother. They give you Jersey Shore, shows from the past. That's what they give you. Outrage news is worse than fake news. It's dangerous, too, because it could fool our society into thinking that things were worse than they actually are. It's also undermining those causes that have a legitimate purpose. Microaggressions, mini aggressions, all this stuff. Pretty soon, it's going to become so complicated that most Americans are going to be like, I simply cannot fuck with all of that. It's too much. I don't even understand the entire mini aggression thing. What you say is your verbal disagreement is an assault against my. Shut up. Shut your mouth and grow a pair. There are real battles that need to be fought. And we need to stop adding fuel and feeding the fires of outrage, unnecessary outrage, because we're going to deplete our passion. And when we need it the most, it won't be there. It'll be replaced by indifference and non-participation.